What's up, everyone, and welcome to Clear Talk. So, in this video, we are talking about the Vanity Fair expose, if you will, of Susie Wiles, of the White House in general, really, but it's mostly centered around Susie Wiles and the number of interviews that she has given over this past year to Vanity Fair. All about the ins and outs of the White House and the people that are in it. And as you know, Susie Wiles, she is the chief of staff of the White House. Basically, the chief of staff is kind of like, in some regards, the most powerful person in the White House outside of the president. The chief of staff is the one that basically handles, to some degree, all of them little minions, up underneath the president, and is the kind of direct line to the president of kind of keeping them in check, historically, keeping them on the straight and narrow, so to speak, or like, giving them the hard truths of actions or things that they say or pursuing or considering or things like. That's kind of what the idea of the chief of staff to some degree is. So the question is that what she's doing? Is she actually holding him in control, or is she, and to what degree, or does she even want to? That is the big question, and I think that, and to some degree, this article kind of exposes in some for me. So we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to go into very deep depth here. So this would probably be a long video. So fair warning on that. If you be ready to, take in a long one here. Thank you very much for joining me. If you are new to Clear Talk, welcome, 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 welcome. If you would like to check out more videos from the channel, please do so. Consider subscribing, like, share, comment, all the good stuff to help get more videos in front of more people. If you'd like to check out my other channels, JMDPLAY, JMD Puzzling, if you like what you see there, consider subscribing to those channels as well. That'd be amazing. Patreon there for $3 a month to help. You can support any of the channels you would like there. Or to help grow those channels, help grow Patreon, help grow the JMD Nation, and contribute however you would like. Any contribution and support that you give is very much appreciated, and I thank you very, very, very much. And if you're returning, you are freaking amazing. I will tell you every time, you are amazing. Keep coming back. Welcome back, because we love you here. So now, all right. What are we talking about here? Could have already had that adjusted. My apologies. What are we talking about here? Okay, so what has happened? Vanity Fair has had an exclusive interviews with the chief of staff, Susie Wiles. Basically, it seems like once a month for this entire year so far. So basically, roughly around 10 interviews or so, where they have asked her about multiple things, issues and stuff going on within the White House, things that have happened, people of the White House and everything like that. And she has spoken on pretty much anything freely. And while this came out, I think a few days ago, and so far what I've seen it sort of be represented to some degree is like this kind of like big exposure of the White House. And like to the degree that it is damning, and also like this sort of weird, how is she possibly still even like employed at this point? That she's just she's just telling all and just throwing everybody under the bus, or kind of a feeling that you're getting from a lot of the what few people have talked about it so far. And while I do agree that it is it is actually to some degree quite damning, and it is very much exposing sections of the White House and people in the White House. I don't think it doesn't. It actually comes off to me more like something that everything that she says, I feel like they would all agree with. That they would all be like, yeah, that's the way it is, and we're okay with it. Like, it doesn't come off as she is speaking actually negatively, at least in her opinion, of the people in this article and who she discusses and what she discusses. At least not completely. I mean, there's moments where she does break the line a little bit, but like she's mostly, even when she's seeing something that I or some others would consider quite damning of them, she doesn't say it in a way where she's also like exposing or throwing them under the bus or damning them. Like she's saying it almost in like she gives defense of it in many ways. Um, and so I no, I don't feel like her uh, job isn't in any danger, honestly, after reading this entire thing. This article is long. It is a two-piece in Vanity Fair. The first part you can basically get free. You can go to Vanity Fair and you can look at it, read through it. But the second part is basically hidden behind a paywall. So I did that for you. I paid the $2 to get the second part. I copied and pasted text for the entire article. I went through it and culled through it and deleted all the repeats where they would put, a piece of text bigger to enhance a certain section of the article before or after you've already read it. That kind of silly stuff that magazines do. And I've went through and highlighted major sections that I want to go through and talk about. But this article is long, like I said. When I stripped it to text and put it in Word at 10-point text, it's like 17 pages in Word. So it is long. It's a good 30-minute read. I think that's about roughly how long it took me to read it. It's about 30 minutes. Maybe longer, shorter, depending upon how fast you read. I don't consider myself like a super speed reader or anything, so I feel like I'm kind of average. So take that as you will. But yeah, rough about 30 minutes read. So, I do encourage you to go look at the entire thing if you want to, because it is a very interesting read. If you would like, I mean, you will see the entire thing here, even though I've highlighted certain sections. You could stop and pause and read all of it if you want to right here in this video. But we are going to go over specific sections. And I'm going to go as quickly as I can through them and give my opinions and thoughts on them. But I did highlight quite a bit of it. So, bear with me. But we're going to go with each section, section by section. So, all right, first off, here I've got it laid out like a 2-page thing, and we'll go through, page by page by page by page. You see, the stuff in orange is what I'm going to go over. That has been enhanced to 12 points, so that's a little bit bigger than the other sections. So it's a little bit more readable for you as I go along. But this first section of this is kind of almost a sort of basic summary of the whole article, really. He hits points really quickly that he just wants to throw out there at you in case you don't feel like reading the whole thing, I guess. But so we're going to go through this sort of summary section. We're going to go through a good bit of it, and then we'll hit all the individual parts where he's hitting on all specific like things that have happened throughout the year, things that people have done or whatever, So anyways, let's get started though, because this video is probably already going to be long enough. All right, so we start out here. Throughout the past year, Wiles and I have spoken regularly about almost everything: the contents and consequences of the Epstein files, ICE's brutal mass deportations, Elon Musk's evisceration of USAID, the controversial deployment of the National Guard to U.S. cities, the demolition of the East Wing, the lethal strikes on boats alleged between being piloted by drug smugglers, acts many have called war crimes, Trump's physical and mental health, and whether he will defy the 22nd Amendment and try to stay on for a third term. Most senior White House officials parse their words and speak only on background, but over many on-the-record conversations, Wiles answered almost every question I put to her. So as you can see here, this guy, I'm gonna be honest, this person, I don't know whether it's a guy or girl, honestly. This person that did this article, not in any way do they actually agree with a lot of things that is being said here. and they point out a lot of the stuff that this administration has actually done. So I feel like they're being, but and they're giving both sides, like what she says compared to what we are seeing in reality. So it's I think it's a pretty good reads. Oh, my bad. Trump, she told me, has an alcoholic's personality. This is sort of a summary of some people, real quick. And we're going to get to deeper sections of it later on. Vance's conversation with Never Trumper to MAGA acolyte, she said, has been sort of political. Where where Vance, originally had stuff going where he out there talking bad about Trump and everything, and all of a sudden, boom, he's a Trump lover. Is sort of political. The vice president, she added, has been a conspiracy theorist for a decade. Russell Vought, architect of the notorious Project 2025 and head of the Office of Management and Budget, is, quote, a right-wing absolute zealot. Now, this one's interesting that he threw in here because from what I remember, and I've went over this thing at least twice now, Russell Vought is not spoken about in the rest of the article, because I think so he kind of just threw this in there as an extra, really, because I don't recall him coming up anywhere else. But anyways, still interesting to know that she quoted a right-wing absolute zealot, because I think that's something we all know and probably agree on. When I asked her what she thought of Musk reposting a tweet about public sector workers killing millions under Hitler, Stalin, and Mao, whatever, how the fuck you say it, she replied, I think that's when he's microdosing. And what she means by that, and we'll later see, is that she says that he is a ketamine, basically a ketamine addict. So she thinks that's when he's microdosing, but she does not have firsthand knowledge. All right. Wiles is the most powerful person in Trump's White House other than the president himself. Unlike any chief of staff before her, she is a woman. So many decisions of great consequences are being made on the whim of the president, and as far as I can tell, the only force that can direct or channel that whim is Susie, former Republican chief, told me. In most White Houses, the chief of staff is first among a bunch of equals. She may be first with no equals. All right. I don't think there's anyone in the world right now that could do the job that she's doing, Rubio told me. He called her bond with Trump an earned trust. Vance describes Wiles' approach to the chief's job. There is this idea that people have that I think was very common in the first administration, that their objective was to control the president or influence the president or even manipulate the president because they had to in order to serve the national interests. Now, that one's an interesting thing to say, because that sort of insinuates that people around Trump in the first administration had to do so because things that he was enacting or trying to do or would say or whatever, they did not consider it to be in a way to serve the national interest. And that's the reason why they had to control him. That's a very interesting thing to say. And that's coming from Vance. Maybe the reason why he didn't agree with Trump to begin with and said so many things about him. Susie just takes the diametrical opposite viewpoint, which is that she's a facilitator, that the American people have elected Donald Trump, and her job is to actually facilitate his vision, to make his vision come to life. Which is also revealing that the idea here is that he was voted in, so the American people, like in general, want his vision and want what he wants, so she's allowing it to happen, period, no, full stop, regardless of whether or not it serves a natural interest. That's what I take from that. But you take from it what you will. Historically, the White House Chief of Staff is the president's gatekeeper, confidant, and executor of his agenda. That often means telling the president hard truths. Upon taking office, Ronald Reagan was hell-bent on reforming Social Security. James A. Baker explained to him that cutting Social Security benefits was the third rail of American politics. Reagan pivoted to tax cuts and was ultimately reelected in a landslide. Donald Rumsfeld, Gerald Ford's chief, explained the White House chief of staff is the one person besides his wife who can look him right in the eye and say, this is not right. You simply can't go down that road. Just how far will Trump veer off the guardrails of democracy? The question around Wiles' tenure under Trump has been whether she will do anything to restrain him. And better question, does she want to? So that is the summary section there. And then from here is kind of going by date, when he's talked to her and what months and stuff. This first part one kind of goes in order on dates to some degree. Part two does a little skipping around. I didn't particularly like the way part two was laid out, in my opinion, but either way. But we're going to hit on all these specific stuff. First, here is a lot of stuff. The first section is a lot about Trump, and then we go into other figures as we go through. So here we go on Trump. But on that January day, talking about the first January 11th before his inauguration, as his second inauguration approached, Wiles was determined to show the world a new Trump. I told Hakeem Jeffries, "You will see a different Donald Trump when he gets there," she recounted to me. I've not seen him throw anything. I've not seen him scream. I didn't see that really horrible behavior that people talk about and that I actually experienced years ago. This is an interesting thing that, before the issue was that he was basically, almost like a madman. He screamed. He was horrible, yelled, threw things. I'm assuming this is from the first administration. And when she speaks about actually experiencing this herself, she was berated by him in 2016 because she helped with his campaign then. And when he was getting some bad numbers from Florida, trying to win the state of Florida, and he was getting bad poll numbers, he berated her for what she claims is like an hour and a half in front of all kinds of people, and to the point where she didn't even know how to respond to him at first, whether to just get mad and angry at him or just sit there stoically, and what she really wanted to do was just cry. He was that vicious to her. And then eventually she got up the nerve to basically be like, if you want me to be all mad and angry and just like you're being or whatever, then I'm not your person. But if you want to win this state, then that's who I am. And she turned around and walked out. And he ultimately apparently gained some trust in that, found that interesting that she would go back at him like that. And that's where it all blossomed with their relationship. Because from there on, he every day was on her, and she, and he went on to win Florida, and of course, eventually the presidency. So that's what she's talking about when she's talking about experiencing years ago. She goes on briefly to discuss her father, which she, is the child of the infamous Pat Summerall, who was he was a kicker for the New York Giants, and eventually became the voice of the NFL. She talks about that briefly and how he was, a sort of a absent father because of all that stuff, and an alcoholic, and that's how she grew up understanding an alcoholic personality, and that's where she gets into Trump. On her father's knees, Susie Summerall became a football aficionado, rattling off win-losses records and player stats like a miniature John Madden. An ability she said Trump shares. The president, it turns out, is a junkie of that and is like a statistical savant. she said. So this is something that she's pointing out as a positive, on him, that he's a statistical junkie or a numbers junkie. He can keep and remember statistics and numbers, and apparently like polling and things like that. Like, he remembers those kinds of things and he can spit them out. My problem with that is that every time he spits out any kind of so-called statistics or numbers or polling or whatever, it's always false. It's always a lie. So it's like, where is he getting these numbers? And, he's holding on to information that is false and lies and just flat out wrong, and continuously spewing lies. So it's one thing to be a statistical junkie, so to speak, and shows there is talent for that, or in that. But not if you're holding on to false information and you're constantly spewing false information. That's my problem with that. And as she goes on talking about, having an alcoholic father, and how she like portrays that with Trump and his personality, like how she kind of folds that all together. Some clinical psychologist that knows 1 million times more than I do will dispute what I'm going to say. But high-functioning alcoholics, or alcoholics in general, their personalities are exaggerated when they drink. And so I'm a little bit of an expert on big personalities. Trump has an alcoholic's personality, in meaning he operates with a view that there's nothing he can't do. Nothing, zero, nothing. So he operates in this way where he thinks that he can do whatever he wants, however he wants. He can fix anything, solve anything, or he can, whatever that, meaning for him is, like, he can do whatever he wants, and that's his personality. And nobody can stop him, or nobody can prevent him from doing so. So that's an interesting thing to think about. When meeting him years ago, when she was first introduced, and he was apparently like couldn't believe that he was talking to the daughter of the great Pat Summerall. He says it 1 million times. Wiles says, "I judge people by their genes." And we've known and heard about this on Trump, that he is super impressed by genetics. And he thinks that good genetics is seen in someone's successfulness. That if they succeed, if they become rich and wealthy and powerful and accomplished in a way where they, at his level, that they have good genes, and that is genes that is worth having in America. That is genes that's worth having basically on this earth. And that anybody who isn't that is not true humans. They're not true Americans. They're not true people of worth, so to speak. That we have seen and heard many times about Trump. And she basically says that that's what I judge people by genes. Wiles thought Trump was interesting and smart. Okay, well, now we know where she stands. All right. When talking about the rioters, I believe this is, yes, the January 6th, and pardoning them, okay? Did she ever ask the president, wait a minute, do you really want to pardon all 1,500 January 6 convicts, or should we be more selective? She replies, I did exactly that. I said, I'm on board with the people that were happenstancers or didn't do anything violent. And we certainly know what everybody did because the FBI has done such an incredible job. That's Susan Wiles. The FBI has done an incredible job, although Trump has said his FBI investigators were corrupt and part of a deep state. But Trump argued that even the violent offenders had been unfairly treated. Wiles explained in every case of the ones he was looking at, she specified that. In every case, they had already served more time than the sentence guidelines would have suggested. So, given that, I sort of got on board. Which he then goes on to state, according to court records, many of the Jan 6 rioters pardoned by Trump had received sentences that were lighter than the guidelines. And then she goes on to say, there have been a couple of times where I've been outvoted, and if there's a tie, he wins. So yes, basically, I would assume we're talking about Trump here in reading over cases. I'm pretty sure he only looked at a couple of them, and the couple that and it was probably purposely given to him in an order in which the first couple of them that he would potentially actually read, were people who had already served enough time. They were probably the lighter cases. And then he was like, you know what? These people are being treated wrong. They've already done their time. Let's just pardon all of them. Pardon all of them. So, I mean, I'm pretty certain that it feels to me, and you'll see this ongoing, that Trump does not know as much about things as one might would think. And he makes decisions, unfortunately, based on that. As we go on, this one is going into Elon Musk. From day one, Miles had a grapple with another powerful power center, Elon Musk. She quotes, "He is complete solo act." Did she ever ask? Oh, sorry, never mind. The challenge with Elon is keeping up with him, she told me. And this is a long one, and I highlighted this entire section because I think it's incredibly important. He's an avowed ketamine user, and he sleeps in a sleeping bag in the EOB, the Executive Office of Building, in the daytime. And he's an odd duck, as I think geniuses are. So you see, even this, where she's speaking of him as a ketamine user, he's an odd person, but she considers him a genius. You know, it's not helpful, but he is his own person. And then she goes on to talk about all this, but she thinks he's a genius. So she's defending him. She's like, she just sort of throws it off. Yeah, I mean, it's just who he is. So, there's nothing you can really do about it. It's just who he is. Musk triggered the first true crisis of the Trump presidency in an early test for Wiles. Trump's chief was shocked when the SpaceX founder eviscerated USAID, the United States Agency for International Development. I was initially aghast. This is Wiles. I was initially aghast because I think anybody that pays attention to government and has ever paid attention to USAID believed, as I did, that they do very good work. In his executive order freezing foreign aid, Trump had decreed that life-saving programs should be spared. Instead, they were shuttered. When Elon said, "We're doing this," this is quote from Wiles, when Elon said, "We're doing this," he was already into it. And that's probably because he knew it would be horrifying to others. But he decided that it was a better approach to shut it down, fire everyone, shut them out, and then go rebuild. Not the way I would do it. So she's admitting that he's basically breaking shit to break it, and then we'll figure it out later. Like I have said over and over again, the way they are approaching everything. And is not, she did go on to say there, not the way I would have done it. Miles knew that fixing this was on her. This is a very important part. The president doesn't know and never will. He doesn't know the details of these smallish agencies. So, the one that's supposed to be kind of the arbiter of truth and like keep the president in line and everything, she's completely hiding this kind of stuff. Elon's going around breaking shit like crazy and going off the deep end, firing people here, firing people there, shutting off vital programs. And she says that the president doesn't know and never will. He doesn't understand, doesn't know the details of these small agencies. And so, yeah, I mean, why tell him? Well, I'll just fix it. But did she? Wiles said she called Musk on the carpet. You can't just lock people out of their offices, she recalls telling him. At first, Wiles didn't grasp the effect that slashing USAID programs would have on humanitarian aid. I didn't know a lot about the extent of their grant making, but with immunizations halted in Africa, lives would be lost. Soon she was getting frantic calls from relief agency heads and former government officials with a dire message. Thousands of lives were in the balance. Wiles continues. So Marco is on his way to Panama. We call him and say, your Senate confirmed you're going to have to be the custodian, essentially, of USAID. Okay, he said, but Musk forged ahead, all throttle, no brake. Elon's attitude is you have to get it done fast. If you're an incrementalist, you just won't get your rocket to the moon. Which is an interesting thing because, I mean, he's been saying that he's going to, get to Mars. Like his plan for Mars was already passed, and he hasn't been there, so he isn't even living up to his own, his own standards. Wiles said, and so with that attitude, you're going to break some China, but no rational person could think that U.S. aid process was a good one. Nobody. Talking about the process of what Elon did to USAID. The shuttering USAID crippled the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief, PEPFAR. The antiretroviral program, launched with $15 billion by George W. Bush in 2003, was credited with preventing millions of deaths. It depends on USAID grants. In an interview with the Financial Times, Bill Gates remarked, the picture of the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children is not a pretty one. And I remember when that come out, and I was like, yeah, I mean, fuck Bill Gates, but he's right. Privately, another drama was playing out, and this one is interesting. This section is interesting, and I almost considered not putting it in, but it's like, you know what? No, this is actually probably a good thing to talk about. Bush himself, George W. Bush himself, had gotten wind of the gutting of PEPFAR. He called Rubio to express alarm, according to a former aide close to Bush. He'd been appalled by Trump from the beginning, and he's determined not to weigh in, the aide said. But Musk's attack on one of his legacy achievements was too much. Bush said that person cares deeply about the PEPFAR program. That and wounded warriors are the two things where he will weigh in, not publicly, but with intention. So Bush was not very happy with Elon fucking around with PEPFAR in the U.S. aid at all. And was like, look now, you've gone too far. Did Rubio have any regrets about the untold number of lives that PEPFAR's evisceration might cost? No. First of all, and this is from Rubio. No. First of all, whoever said that, it's just not being accurate, he told me. We are not eviscerating PEPFAR. PEPFAR has been rearranged and reorganized in such a way where we're not going to be able to deliver aid. Where we're now going to be able to deliver aid in a way that has a goal. The goal is to help countries become self-sustained, with a note of America first, he added. Let's begin with the premise, is it the United States' fault? Why isn't China paying for more immunizations? Why isn't UK or Canada or any of the G7 countries? That's his argument, that we are going to shut down things, or we're going to reorganize it in a way that we're doing it as a goal, and the goal is America first. Meaning, if it's not our fault, if we didn't have anything to do with what we're giving aid to, then we're not going to give that aid, basically. And then the reporter goes on to state the UK followed in the footsteps of the US, slashing foreign aid in 2025. And in November, China, which basically saying the UK was giving aid. In November, China, which funded the Africa CDC, pledged 3.5 million in AIDS prevention in South Africa alone. Meaning, yes, China is giving immunizations. Although his argument was, why China paying for more immunizations? Because I guess he stating that China, funds the African CDC, they should be paying more. Why are we helping out? Why are we doing stuff? The understanding with the U.S. helping out when it comes to USAID, and I talked about this months ago when this happened, is preventative. It's ultimately in our best interest, with the fact that there's so much international traveling and back and forth to countries from here to there. It is in our best interest and safety for the public to aid as much as possible in trying to prevent or bring down diseases and things in other countries that have no means of doing so. And that ultimately helps out everyone, not really even just the US, everyone. And that's the reason why these big countries, the US, UK, China, and amongst many others, gives aid to less ability countries to handle things like that, to give out aid in different forms and stuff, to help to keep diseases and stuff as low as possible, so that it will ultimately help the world at large, the more macro scale. That's the point. And complete, and this sort of selfishness of, oh well, we wouldn't have nothing to do with this, so fuck them. This such a childish, immature, just completely oblivious view of how things benefit others. If it's why how is it benefiting us? They're only looking on a financial state. We're putting out money, and this is not this is money that we can cut. Let's not worry about the fact that there's money going to other shit that we need to cut that generally doesn't do anything and actually causes more harm. But no, this stuff, okay, yeah, let's cut this because we don't want, fuck, man, it's whatever. When I repeat Rubio's comment to a former GOP House chief of staff, he remarked, "I find that immoral." And this section is talking about the cabinet of MAGA, where she helped to put together this cabinet. That's right. Wiles helped put together this cabinet. She states, Wiles called them a world-class cabinet, better than anything I could have conceived of. Trump's cabinet members are either one of the least qualified presidential teams in history, or, to hear Wiles tell it, disruptors. The only people with the balls to take on an entrenched deep state. But what's interesting is what she goes on to state is the deep state. People talk about the deep state being at the State Department. Wiles said, it's not. It's the military-industrial complex. She's stating that the deep state is the military-industrial complex. where she goes on, she's saying Hexeth, in her view, is just a guy to take the powers that be, to take on the powers that be. So her whole concern with any kind of deep state is solely military industrial, just solely the Pentagon. Anything else she doesn't really think is deep state. They're not really a problem. That the corruption and the bad faith acting, the deep state, the ones that are there and causing problems for decades, is in the military industrial complex. And according to Hexeth, apparently that's all the generals, because that's all he attacks. He attacks general after general after general, fires or causes such chaos that the generals quit. He's changing up organizational stuff like crazy, causing chaos and like information issues, communication issues. I mean, it is wild. She referred to Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, another world-class disruptor, as my Bobby and quirky Bobby. In Wiles' view, RFK Jr.'s shock treatment of HHS is warranted. He pushes the envelope. Some would say too far, but I say in order to get back to the middle, we have to push it too far. Which the reporter goes on to say, in December, Kennedy's federal vaccine panel voted to end the decades-long recommendation for newborn vaccinations against Hep B, which is highly infectious and causes liver failure. That's what getting back to the middle is ending newborn vaccines like HB, which is a very important. It's been highly accepted for decades now to help prevent transference of Hep B to newborns through delivery. But she thinks he's warranted. Going on. Tariffs. So much thinking out loud when talking about when Trump, threw out his April 2nd Liberation Day. So much thinking out loud is what I would call it, said Wiles for Trump's chaotic tariff rollout. There was a huge disagreement over whether tariffs were a good idea. Trump's advisors were sharply divided, some believing tariffs were a panacea, meaning like a positive good thing that would benefit, help or whatever, and others predicting disaster. Wiles told them to get with Trump's program. I said, this is where we're going to end up, so figure out how you can work into what he's already thinking. Well, they couldn't get there. So she's, again, facilitating on, like, there's no, even though you don't agree with him, he's going to do what he's going to do, and you might as well get on board. That is what she's doing when it comes to Trump. Wiles recruited Vance to help tap the brakes. We told Donald Trump, hey, let's not talk about tariffs today. Let's wait until we have the team in complete unity, and then we'll do it, she said. But Trump barreled ahead, announcing sweeping reciprocal tariffs from 10 to 100%, which triggered panic on the bond market and a sell-off of stocks. Trump paused his policy for 90 days, but by the time that the president's helter-skelter levies were given rise to the taco chant, Trump always chickens out. And I remember that, where he was, on again, off again, off again, off again, on again, off again, like multiple times there. And it was causing the market to go up and down, up and down, up and down. And many were like, dude, is this fucker doing this on purpose? Like, is he trying to help people, enrich themselves? Because, there was a lot of controversy also around people that seemed to know what was going to happen beforehand. And we're selling off and buying in very suspicious moments. I mean, this was huge when this was going on. Wiles believed a middle ground on tariffs would ultimately succeed, but it's been more painful than I expected. No shit. No shit. And it's not been just more painful for you. It's been more painful for all of America. As he goes on to state there, a Harvard poll shows 56% of voters think Trump's tariff policies have harmed the economy. When it comes to the National Guard and the deployment of troops in the United States and to cities and stuff, Los Angeles and Washington, deeming that the crime was out of control. This was like a vitamin boost of ICE, of the National Guard, of the Park Service Police, who actually have more authority than the D.C. Metro Police. And the idea was to right the ship and then slowly back off. And that's what we're doing. Is that what you think you're doing? Okay. All right. Well, critics denounce the deployments are unconstitutional, performative, and ineffective, and many fear Trump had another, more sinister plan up his sleeve. While the president used the military to suppress and even prevent voting during the midterms and beyond, will he do so? Because we've had this where they were developing a task force, a police force, federal enforcement group that they were trying to train up and be ready by January of 2026 to be able to be deployed anywhere in the United States at any point for any reason. And the concern there was that this was going to be used to try to create pressure or an influence on the midterms. And we've talked about this before. And that's, in my opinion, still in question. But she says, I say it is categorically false. Will not happen. It's just wrong-headed, she snapped. Where he asked, do you understand where people who think that are coming from? I do a little bit, but not fully. I mean, I think they hate the president. They think he's too wrapped up in what happened in 2020. Well, no shit, because he constantly fucking talks about it. He has never let go of 2020. The president and his team were pushing almost every legal and constitutional boundary and defying courts to stop them. But would Trump obey the Supreme Court? Do you think he would adhere to whatever the court decides in the end? I asked Wiles. I do, she replied, but Wiles made a prediction. The smart lawyers around us, which I found funny, all the smart lawyers that the Trump administration has been going into courts trying to defend actions that courts are repetitively over and over again kicking out, laughing at. Like, no, there's nothing here. No, you're not doing this. The smart lawyers around us think that we will be slowed down, as we already have been, but we will ultimately prevail. When it comes to the legal and constitutional boundaries and defying the courts, obeying the Supreme Court, we will ultimately prevail. What we are trying to do, we are going to keep pushing until we prevail. They won't stop, basically. Nothing's going to stop them. They might be slowed down, but they will ultimately prevail. When talking about the expansions on the White House, not far from where we sat was a gaping hole where the East Wing had been just days before. I asked her about the fierce criticism that follows its demolition to make way for Trump's 90,000 square foot ballroom. Were you surprised by it? No, Wiles replied. Oh, no, and I think you'll have to judge it by its totality because you only know a little bit of what he's planning. Say what? You only know a little bit of what he's planning? A 90,000 square foot ballroom that supersedes the fucking White House itself is just a little bit of what he's planning? Was she saying that Trump was planning more as yet undisclosed renovations? She quoted, "I'm not telling." Wow. Wow. There are potential plans for more, and what the hell that like, is it more on the ballroom side or is it more on other sections? Like, what else does he plan on? I mean, we already seen that he's just gold plated every fucking thing throughout the White House, damn near it. I mean, it's just it's just really just, in my opinion, ridiculous. Um his obsession with gold, or at least things looking gold, because it sure as fuck ain't gold. But like, it's so fake, and so just dramatic. When it comes to the Epstein files, this was interesting. This is interesting section here. Epstein files. Wiles told me she underestimated the potency of the scandal. All right. This is her quote. Okay. Whether he was an American CIA asset, a Mossad asset, whether all these rich, important men went to that nasty island and did unforgivable things to young girls, she said. I mean, I kind of knew it, but it's never anything I paid a bit of attention to. Wow. In my opinion, that speaks of her. That she's admitting that she kind of knew about these kinds of things that was going on. And that, about Epstein and about these other individuals, and that things were going on at this nasty island, doing unforgivable things. But I mean, I just never paid that much attention to it. You did not care. You fucking saying you did not care. And apparently still don't care. When talking about the Epstein file phase 1, where Bondi was releasing that first folder release that she gave to like to influencers and stuff that was supposed to be like new big things or whatever released, and it wound up just being a nothing burger. She quotes, "I think she completely whiffed on appreciating that was the very targeted group that cared about this." Wiles said of Bondi, "First, she gave them binders full of nothingness, and then she said that the witness list or the client list was on her desk. There is no client list, and it sure as hell wasn't on her desk." So she's throwing Bondi under the bus here. This one is truly kind of a throw under the bus. That, yeah, she lied about that. And then she goes on. Wiles told me she read what she calls the Epstein files. And she said, "Trump is in the file, and we know he's in the file, and he's not in the file doing anything awful." Or at least what she claims is the file. Wiles said that Trump was on Epstein's plane. He's on the manifest. They were, sort of young, single, whatever. I know it's a posse word, but sort of young, single playboys together. She's defending this out as if they were sort of young, single playboys, and yes, they were on the plane, and yeah, sort of young, single, whatever. There were young girls, yeah, but that boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Whoa. the far fetches of what you will just ignore and blind yourself to and forgive. Like, it was in the past, they were kind of young and they were single, and yeah, there may have been sketchy shit going to a nasty island that did unspeakable things to girls. But, boys will be boys. She goes on to start about Bill Clinton. Trump was claimed without evidence, but that Bill Clinton visited Epstein's infamous private island, Little St. James, supposedly 28 times. Wiles quotes, "There is no evidence those visits happened." According to Wiles, as for whatever there was anything incriminating about Clinton in the files, the president was wrong about that. So she's basically saying, yeah, he lied. Yeah, he was wrong. There's nothing incriminating about Bill Clinton. Nothing incriminating about Bill Clinton. Now, I'm not completely convinced about that, to be honest. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Bill Clinton's pictures certainly are in there, and he was certainly a friend of Epstein's, or at least acquaintances. So I'm not completely on board with that. But, like, she's saying that the Trump is wrong. She's saying that there's no evidence, at least to the what she has seen of the Epstein files. So take that what you will. Again, like I said, I don't think that all the pictures, and I'm going to probably at some point talk about the pictures, releases, and stuff. I feel like talking about them too quickly is not, I don't know, not genuine. Some of the pictures, yeah, they are potentially kind of scaly, or, but like also maybe not. Like, there's no definitive really thing about the pictures at this point, what has been released, in my opinion. Like, yeah, you could stretch it as far as you want, and you good reason to, but like at the same time, while I agree Epstein certainly is a bad guy and did bad things, and like there are certainly bad players, and we need to know who those bad players are. But it doesn't necessarily mean that every freaking picture that Epstein held on to was like directly connected to the activities that he engaged in. Like, it's not like 24/7 he was doing those activities. He did have a like clean side to him for imagery sakes, right? So it's like, okay, yeah, there are pictures of him with certain people and whatnot, but that doesn't mean anything. And this is the same argument that could be made for Trump here. Like, there needs to be definitive pictures showing Trump or any other figure with like illegal actions going on. That needs to be released. And then you're like, okay, yes, boom. Like that's, because a picture is just a picture sometimes, And that's where I kind of sit there. Like, I want definitive proof before I go like, oh yeah, he's guilty. He's guilty. He's guilty. Do I assume? Yeah, I assume quite a few of them. But like, I want absolute like truth. Okay. She goes on to talk about the people who are, worried about the Epstein files. The people that are inordinately interested in Epstein are the new members of the Trump coalition, the people that I think about all the time, because I want to make sure that they are not Trump voters, they're Republican voters. It's the Joe Rogan listeners. It's the people that are sort of new to our world. It's not the MAGA base. So she is claiming here that people that are concerned about Epstein are not real MAGA people, that MAGA doesn't care about Epstein. Whoa. Whoa. Not sure. Huh. Interesting. Not sure that she's right there, but okay. Wiles wanted to put an end to what she believes is a persistent myth that Trump is a warmonger. To the contrary, Wiles says the president genuinely cares about ending wars and saving human lives. I cannot overstate how much his ongoing motivation is to stop killing, which is not, I don't think, where he was at his last term. Not that he wanted to kill people necessarily. That's an interesting way to put that. But stop the killing wasn't his first thought. It's his first and last thought now. And then the reporter goes on to state, though, and make a point, whether that thought is genuine or driven by his desire for a Nobel Peace Prize, of course, is open for debate. And that's a good point. Like, is his sudden, arguments that he's concerned about wars and trying to stop wars and whatever, is it really genuine to his actual concern of people dying or not? Or is it just that he's obsessed with trying to find a way to justify him getting the Nobel Peace Prize? Like, he's so obsessed with getting this prize, this accolade, this something that he can put on a mantle that he can place in his, success of a human being or whatever, like some kind of prize thing. Is he just basically talking the talk in order to get this prize, which he is yet to receive? Well, outside of that fake bullshit that the what was it, the soccer league or whatever they kind of gave him some sort of peace prize bullshit just to appease him, make him feel good. It was so ridiculous. Anyways, all right, continuing on. We're not too far from the end. On Venezuela, Wiles told me about Trump's Venezuela strategy. He wants to keep on blowing up boats until Maduro cries uncle. And people way smarter than me on that say that he will. Now, this whole idea on Venezuela is that it was supposed to be, about drugs. But here, this is stating that, no, it's about regime change. It's not about drugs. Interesting. Wiles didn't mince word. The president believes in harsh penalties when it talks about, when the questioning, people are like, there's people being killed in here. Reports of these people are just fishermen, and like, what, people concerned about it. Does the administration even have a heart? Wiles didn't mince word. The president believes in harsh penalties for drug dealers, as he has said many, many times. These are not fishing boats, as some people would like to allege. The boats, she argued, carry drugs. Eliminating them saves lives. The president says 25,000. I don't know what the number is, but he views those as lives saved, not people killed. So she's even admitting here that she's just letting him say shit. And she's just letting him go along with it. She doesn't even fucking know herself. She's as oblivious as he is. Drug smuggling, I point out to Wiles, is not a death penalty offense, even if the president wishes it were. No, it's not. I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying that this is a war on drugs. It's unlike any. It's unlike any other. It's unlike another one that we've seen. I think that's a little weird it said that, but that's what it is. Obviously, it's a war declared only by president and without any congressional approval, I said. Don't need it yet, Wiles replied. We're very sure we know who we're blowing up. One of the great untold stories of the U.S. government is the talents of the CIA. Oh, that's an untold story. And there may be an interest in going inside territorial waters, which we have permission to do, because they're skirting the coastline to avoid getting caught. Really? But Wiles conceded that attacking targets on Venezuela mainland would force Trump to get congressional approval. If he were to authorize some action on land, then it's war. So blowing up ships is not war. That's not an act of war. I would beg to differ. How many times has some kind of action been done on U.S. ships and we consider it an act of war? It's awful funny when stuff is done to us and we declare it as this or that or whatever. But when we do stuff to other people, it's like, oh no, that's not what it is. That's not what it is. We're good with that. We're okay. We can do that. We can do that. If he would authorize some action on land, it is war. Then we'd need Congress. But Marco and JD, in some extent, are up on the Hill every day briefing. So there is intent. There is most certainly intent to go to land. They are up. If they are up on the Hill every day briefing with Congress, means they're trying to persuade Congress on allowing a land strike. That's wild. That's wild. On someone, and we're making these actions, blowing up people instead of just seizing ships, instead of just seizing the ships and proving that, and seizing the drugs, seizing the people on it, incriminating them, sending them, the law and order kind of way, instead of just blowing them the fuck up. Like, it's just extrajudicial. It is illegal. You don't have the right to do that. She's just oblivious and ignorant as if everybody else, or compliant. Skip ahead a little bit. This is referring to his mental condition and like actions he's been doing. In December, when asked about Trump falling asleep in cabinet meetings, Wiles said he's not asleep. He's got his eyes closed and his head leaned back. And he's fine. Yeah, they used to say the same shit about sleepy Joe Biden too, right? They used to say the same shit about him. Just saying. What about Trump's increasingly frequent verbal attacks on women, as when in November he snapped, "Quiet, piggy," to a female reporter from Bloomberg? Wiles replied, check this out. He's a counter puncher. And increasingly in our society, the punchers are women. So she is giving him the okay, the defense, the protection that, like, these women deserved it. Are you kidding me? What if he looked at you and said, "Quiet, piggy," or called you stupid or not smart or whatever? Acting like you couldn't pass a cognitive test that he passed with flying colors perfectly. That is very revealing of her. Not very woman power there, is she? She's more solo, like, doesn't it seem? When asked about third terms and stuff, will the president run for a third term, I asked in November. No, she said, and then added, but he sure is having fun with it. Wiles said he knows it's driving people crazy. So that's why he talks about it, I said. Yeah, 100%. Would you say categorically no, and that the 26th Amendment rules out a third term? She says, I do, yeah, and I'm not a lawyer, but based on my reading of it, it's pretty unequivocal. And has he told you that in so many words? Yes. Oh, a couple of times, yeah. And then she went on. Sometimes he laments, gosh, I feel like we're doing really well. I wish I could run again. And then he immediately says, not really. I will have served 2 terms, and I will have gotten done what I need to get done, and it's time to give somebody else a chance. So, any day, any given day, right? But he knows that he can't run again. Months earlier, she mused on the future of the party and the need for it to turn Trump voters into Republican voters. Donald Trump will be an ex-president, and I'll be gone to do whatever I do next, which hopefully will be nothing. So that is a big concern, though. Like, even if he does know, and he's just using it as like a fucking with you kind of thing, just trying to get people riled up to keep stuff interesting or whatever. This right here is a big concern because they know that Trump voters and the Trump machine is very unique. It's very specific. And whether or not people that are strictly for Trump, they think he's the only one. He's the savior. He's the only person that can do what he's doing. And how do you translate that? That's the kind of the problem with the GOP right now. How can you translate that to anyone else? How can you convince Trumpers, full-on hardcore Trump voters, that anyone else can do what he has done in their opinion, in their mind, their delusion, I would say, but regardless, their mind. And that is a very tricky thing. How can we turn them into just Republican voters for anybody, not just Trump? Very interesting, very telling there. Back in March, on the 56th day of the Trump's presidency, I asked Wiles, do you ever go into Trump and say, look, this is not supposed to be a retribution tour? Yes, I do, she replied. We have a loose agreement that the score settling will end before the first 90 days are over. So there's this open agreement that, oh yeah, I will settle scores for 90 days and then we'll stop. In late August, I asked Wiles, remember when you said to me months ago that Trump promised to end the revenge and retribution tour after 90 days? She said, I don't think he's on a retribution tour. A governing principle for him is I don't want what happened to me to happen to somebody else. And so people that have done, they indicted me. They treated me so bad. Although, there are reasons for that, bruh. And so people that have done bad things need to get out of government. And in some cases, it may look like retribution. And there may be an element of that from time to time. So she's sort of hinting and vaguely yeah, some of it is. Who would blame him? Not me. So all of this talk about accusing Letitia James of mortgage fraud, she replies, well, that might be the one retribution. So you haven't called him out on that or said, hey, wait a minute. She replies, no, not on her. Not on her. She had $500 million of his money. She laughed. He goes on to say the massive civil fraud penalty won by the New York Attorney General's office in a case against Trump had just been thrown out by an appeals court. So this is telling in itself that she is admitting that, yeah, this is retribution. This is automatically going to anything that they try to come up with at anybody. Letitia James, Comey, all these people that they are trying to attack, that they say, or the ones that, that went after them, and they're trying to go, sue them and go back after them for all these different claims of fraud, and or uh, 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 defamatory, whatever. Like they're going to be all thrown out because this right here is now on record that, oh yeah, that's probably that's retribution. Yeah, he's just trying to get back at him. In November, it was Comey's turn on the dock. So tell me why Comey's prosecution doesn't just look like the fix is in. And she says, I mean, people could think it does look vindictive. I couldn't tell you why you shouldn't think that. And then a saying of Trump, I don't think he wakes up thinking about retribution, but when there's an opportunity, he will go for it. Hands down, hands down. He's on a retribution tour. Come on. And to end this out, Wiles told me in March that she had difficult conversations with Trump every day. They're over little things, not big, she said. I hear stories about my predecessors about these seminal moments. I think it's supposed to be sentimental moments. I don't know, whatever. Seminal moments where you have to go in and tell the president that he wants to do is unconstitutional or will cost lives. I don't have that. Wiles said Trump has been clear-eyed about what he wants to do, having not been there for 4 years and having had time to think about it, and therefore she can pick her battles. She says, so no, I'm not an enabler. I'm also not a bitch. I try to be thoughtful about what I even engage in. I guess time will tell whether I've been effective. Well, I would say, in everything that I've seen here, you are in fact an enabler. You have enabled Trump and everybody else in this administration to do whatever they wanted, to break whatever they wanted, not even telling the president about Elon, what he was doing, just trying to fix it under the radar. I mean, and the way you think about other women and the way you're allowing people to be treated, the way you think about the Epstein files, the way you think about them just being young, being boys be boys, like you might just be a bitch too. But like this whole thing is showing that she is and I had this sort of opinion of Susie Wiles when she was first picked as being thinking that, okay, of everybody else in this, she actually seems like the most somewhat reasonable person. Like she didn't really have a history, at least what I could see or understand, where it was like she was just off the wall crazy or something. Like she seemed to be the most reasonable, understandable person and someone that I thought might actually be able to kind of control Trump to a degree. And I thought, like I said, when people were first talking about this expose or whatever, like that this was like her coming out and like clearing up shit and throwing people under the bus and all that. Like, it's like, yeah, I mean, she kind of is, but at the same time, she's complicit in it. It's not that she is doing it in a way where she's trying to go at the administration or go at the people in the White House, or like she's doing it to hurt them. She actually thinks these things are good things for the most part. She is completely cooperative in all the things that have been going on in this administration. And like I said, although there are a couple of things like that could be looked at that could have negative things, reactions, overall, I think everything that was stated here, the people around here would be like, yeah, so we're good with it. That's the reason why I said in the beginning, I don't think that anything in here is going to hurt her or going to hurt the administration, like as far as they consider hurting them. Yeah, plenty of people like myself and others can find and see like, fuck, this is serious. Like this, some of this is like pretty wild, and it gives an opening, like unveils some of the ideas and like characteristics or personalities and like how people think in the White House or how people act in the White House or about certain things. And we would consider that damning. But I don't think anything here, as far as in their mind, is damning. They think this is all good things. I think this is a really good article for the most part. And for me, again, reveals that even her, even someone that you might think is holding him at some kind of bay or holding him, like giving him the hard truths and stuff, apparently not. Apparently, she's allowing the lies because maybe even she believes the lies. She's allowing him to do and say with very little pushback. She's allowing others to do and say with very little pushback. Concealing things from the president. And even in the rare moments where she disagrees with certain things, she eventually just goes along with it. Because she's convinced by some arbitrary like reason or whatever. She's as half-witted and out of unmerited, in my opinion, as everybody else is in this administration. I mean, I can see where you think, well, actually, she's probably the most merited, but like reasonably, like her way of reasoning in the position that she has been placed in, being a position where you should be the most reasonable. No, I'm sorry. She's not. Like, she might have the professional, like, history of being able to potentially do the job, but she's not, according to what I'm seeing here. She's not being the hard pushback. She's not being the one that really holds them in line. She's being a facilitator, an enabler, even if she doesn't think she is. I think this was, like I said, a very good article and revealing of stuff. And like knowing now that she's not going to be anything that's going to be a hardcore pushback, just that this administration really, and Trump himself is really just, he does whatever he wants. And he goes with whatever he wants, whatever he thinks is right or accurate or whatever, his statistical mind of all its falsities, and he thinks they're true, or he thinks they're accurate, or he thinks they're right. He thinks he's right. He thinks he can do whatever and is not wrong. Like, this is going to be ongoing. This is no pushback whatsoever in the administration. We truly can only depend on the judiciary pushing back and holding them back, slowing them down as they have, even though they think that ultimately they will prevail. And the hopes that eventually, somehow, we can also get the same from Congress. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. And again, I know this was a long video, but this was a lot of information to go through. And I didn't want to just nitpick a couple little quotes and be like, ha ha, see here. I wanted to go in depth with it. I wanted to give my genuine opinion of it. And, let you not, this is not a hit piece. I mean, not in the sense of what that they think it is, and others have claimed it to be. It's not. It's just really not. It's a piece giving an opinion of somebody in the administration, like unveiling their opinion of what's been going on, and their opinion. While there is some slight contradictions here and there, or like some, resentment to some degree here and there, or like clarity from moment to moment, ultimately they just go along. They're on board. They're complicit. The one person with the most power in the office that could push back on Trump, and clearly she doesn't. And that's kind of heartbreaking. Thank you very much for joining me. And until next time, peace. Clear Talk. I'm out.